Greetings again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of OSI Today, the podcast featuring news and views from around the Office of Special Investigations. I'm Wayne Amon from OSI Public Affairs, and in this edition, we continue our special series within OSI Today called My OSI Journey, which showcases the diversity and inclusion of our command-wide members. And today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Mr. Mike Lyden, the Senior Intelligence Officer for OSI and the Associate Director for Intelligence Management. Sir, welcome to My OSI Journey. Great to finally talk to you today.
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm excited to have the conversation.
Now, before we dive into the questions, I need to preface this. Being a sports fanatic like I am, I noticed in your bio that when you were getting your psychology degree, I believe it was, your bachelor's from Case Western University in Cleveland, Ohio, home of the Browns, I know, you were also a 3-year varsity letterman on the Case Western University football team. So I have to ask you, what was your position, and did you have any aspirations to go pro?
I wish. I'm a little bit on the small side for going pro. I played defensive line and 1 year at middle linebacker.
Wow.
So I was always on the defensive side of the ball, and I am a proud Cleveland Browns fan. I've stuck with them through thick and thin. So that says a lot about my personality right there, maybe.
Wow, very, very good. Well, being from Chicago, I'm a Bears fan, so that's another story entirely. But anyway, let's get into the question, shall we? As we showcase your OSI journey today, sir, when and how did you become interested in law enforcement and subsequently into OSI?
Well, I'm a late comer to the idea of working in law enforcement, and I'll be honest, OSI was not on my radar early in my career. I think I could trace back the why I'm here partially all the way back to as a child, where I was fascinated, almost obsessive with airplanes.
Okay.
All things flying, books and museums and
right.
Everything I could watch on TV at the time on airplanes. And so I think subconsciously, when later in my career, I had a sort of a chance to make a change. OSI being affiliated with the Department of the Air Force spoke to me more so than maybe some of our other organizations, right, dealing with boats and tanks and those sorts of things. So I had a personal affinity for aircraft, but my first career is actually in the social services. So I took a pretty dramatic change. I spent about 4 years in that area, first working with children, then later with adults with traumatic brain injury in home settings. But through happenstance, I had met a professor of intelligence studies at Mercyhurst University in Erie, PA. Who was a colleague of my father's who was working there at the time.
Okay.
And he introduced me to this entire world of intelligence analysis. And we had a great conversation about geopolitics and all kinds of stuff that I was very much interested in, but didn't realize there was an outlet like intelligence analysis. I'm not a military kid, no military background. And it's one of those career fields that, sometimes it's not obvious to everyone that it exists. So I used graduate school as an opportunity to transition from social work to intelligence analysis.
Wow.
Graduated out of there and began working for kind of a small consulting firm around the intelligence community. And from there, ultimately, because of the niche area that I was in, I got recruited by OSI to bring over some of that experience in what I was working with at the time. And apply it to the counterintelligence side of things. So I don't know if that was joining the light or the dark side in the scheme of things, but I made the switch over to CI as an analyst as a GG12 about a decade ago now.
I see. Okay, very interesting. Now, you mentioned you were recruited to OSI. How did that all evolve? Did you go to we've heard a lot about career fairs and things like this, or did somebody just kind of reach out to you and say, hey, Mike, this could be for you?
I was at a intelligence community training event with my who would become my longtime supervisor. We sat next to each other at a table, and that's how I learned about OSI, and he learned about me. And we got to talking, and a couple years, maybe a year later, there was an opening. He reached out, and I followed up, and lo and behold, I ended up as an intelligence specialist for OSI.
Wow. You mentioned that you had no military background per se. As a civilian coming into the career field and into OSI, was there kind of a getting used to period as far as getting used to the acronyms and the way, talking Air Force-ese and things like this that you had to kind of get used to?
Yeah, I really did. OSI is unique, right? Just us, NCIS, and FBI have this blend of the intelligence community and law enforcement.
Right.
That makes it really unique. So unless you're in one of those three organizations, coming into OSI brought with it a unique culture, its own shorthand, and I had never worked in anything close to law enforcement specifically.
Uh-huh.
So for the longest time, I just smirked whenever someone said, the CRIM mission.
Right.
I could
Right.
never understand why all the words that one was decided to be shortened. So
Sure.
I still chuckle myself whenever anyone says CRIM around OSI. But
Right.
after a decade, you get used to it. But
Right.
yeah, that was a little bit of a culture shock. I was also working in civilian agencies
Uh-huh.
prior to OSI, so just understanding the hierarchical nature of a military organization, everything from insignia and ranks and all of that. That was all brand new to me.
Uh-huh. That really lends in nicely to my next question about challenges. You mentioned that particular aspect of getting acclimated to your environment as being a challenge. Were there any other challenges that when you joined OSI that you had to deal with, and how did you overcome them, or was just talking in that vernacular kind of the overriding issue for you?
It was the vernacular, but also getting used to a new set of rules around intelligence oversight that
Uh-huh.
that didn't, while they certainly applied to my previous roles, were not front and center the way they are in an organization like OSI, because we do our work domestically,
Right.
right? We have intelligence oversight. We take great care, right, with our record keeping and all of the work that goes behind the scenes to make that work correctly.
Right.
And that was just an aspect of the intelligence community that I had minimal exposure to. And
Uh-huh.
that takes some adjusting because there's just a different approach to how we carefully handle information about U.S. persons.
Right, right, right. It does, if nothing else, having been formerly in an intelligence career field back in the day before I had gray hair when I was active duty, I can vouch for the fact that if nothing else, just the entire intelligence environment and community is one of the most interesting jobs to be involved with. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
It is. The breadth and scope of topics that we get to touch on a daily basis is awe-inspiring and humbling, and also knowing that there's rarely a second team behind you, right, ready to
Uh-huh.
pick up if you get it wrong.
Right,
So
right,
the bench isn't deep, and that
right.
is both scary sometimes, but also exciting and again humbling that we're given that respect and trust to conduct this mission on behalf of the Department of the Air Force.
Right, right. Well, without a doubt, there's a lot of responsibility, accountability, and very very well put, Mr. Lyden. Now, shifting gears slightly, who or what inspires you to do your best in OSI? Is there like a group or an individual maybe that you've met in your past that has really made an impression on you to do the very best you can day in and day out, or is it something else?
So yeah, there's been so many great team members and supervisors and leadership that I've had the luck to work with over the years. So I would hate to pull any one person out
Sure,
for
sure.
forgetting someone else who's equally awesome. But from a more meta perspective, kind of stepping back for a second, uh, I'm generally inspired by the mission that we've been given that responsibility for. We touched on
Uh-huh.
responsibility, and that is what I find more motivating than just about anything else. I genuinely feel that we contribute to the greater national security of the United States on a day in and day out basis.
Uh-huh.
And again, most of my work in OSI has been on the national security side, less in the law enforcement side.
Right.
And I know those folks also have some of that external motivation, right? Knowing that their community, that their base is a safer place as a result of their actions, right? So
Right.
there's something about having that responsibility for folks like myself and other OSI members, right? That we're both I think, humbled by the experience, but also confident enough that OSI has given us the training and resources and the support necessary, right, to succeed in these situations. And so that's inspiring to know that we've got that level of support, that level of trust, that level of respect. And then a second part of this, to me, has to be with the command's allowance for us to innovate, right? That we know that we have to bring our A game every day. But that doesn't mean that we're not allowed to fail, right? Assuming we do so in a manner where we consider the risk, but we know that failure is a key component to innovation, right? I think it was Edison, right, has this famous quote that, one way to look at it is if you fail 1,000 times, another is you found 1,000 ways it didn't work. Right. There's an important aspect to that.
Kind of dovetailing on that, if I might interject real quick, I heard a phrase that says, if you don't fail, that means you're not trying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's having leadership from the top down who understands the difference between risk acceptance and risk mitigation, and allowing us to have, as those who are executing the mission, right, that room to innovate and fail appropriately. And that's exciting, right?
Right. Yeah, that must give you a great sense of satisfaction, knowing that leadership has your back in that regard.
It does. And there's never been a time, again, this may sound like I'm, cheerleading here for a moment, but there's never been a point in my career where I didn't feel that I had that immediate support. There's a lot of lessons learned from mistakes I've made, and people have made it clear that we can move on, we'll learn, we can adapt from those mistakes as a part of growing up in this career field. And I genuinely thankful for that support.
Right. Now, kind of dovetailing on that question, if I may, you get a lot of, gratification or satisfaction in what you do. Do you find that there's a way that you can really quantify your successes in the Intel community?
So measuring success and intelligence is a very challenging thing. In fact, I wrote my master's thesis on that exact topic.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah. Because here's the problem with intelligence. If I was to make an assessment, say that country A is likely to do bad thing B over the next 3 to 5 years, right, and that gets out to the hands of our agents in the field who do defensive activities to help prevent that. It gets in the hands of senior decision makers, right, who make changes to policy in order to prevent that from happening. And then at an event that I predicted in my analysis doesn't happen, was I wrong, right? Or did all these things that happen influence the future in a way that changes the outcome of what we had predicted? So measuring success kind of from a quantitative standpoint is always been a challenge.
I would guess too, sir, that it would be, timing is a big part of that as well, from what you just said.
Yeah, it's being relevant in your intelligence analysis is very important. Can't be too late. You have to have something that's actionable, right? Our goal as intelligence specialists, specifically doing estimative analysis work, is to reduce uncertainty in decision making. That's our role. And it has to be timely in order for that decision to have the decision maker to have all the information they need to accept whatever risk they may be making a decision to accept, to make any policy decisions they may be getting ready to accept from the tactical level, right? Whether that's a detachment commander deciding how to allocate his or her resources on that base, all the way up right to a secretary level person who's got to make a decision about resource allocation at the department level.
Right.
If it's not timely, right, then it's not effective.
Right. Yeah, it's a big responsibility, and from what you're describing, it's one that you and all of your teammates really seem to. I would say, is it fair to say that you really relish that responsibility?
We do. I think one of our motivators, because it's certainly not the paycheck, right? As civil servants, we have to think of what else brings you to work every day.
Right.
And I think it's understanding that even though OSI may be a smaller agency, that we punch above our weight, that we have impact on national level policy, we impact people's lives also, right? So we span that whole spectrum. And so whatever I think motivates our workforce whether that's touching people individually through their day-to-day work, through law enforcement or fraud investigations, all the way up to these big moving strategic intelligence assessments, right, to affect national level policy. All that has the same effect on people who choose this career field, right? When they see that you've had a chance to make an impact. And
Right.
working for a smaller organization that's nimble like OSI,
Uh-huh.
you can do that much earlier in your career, in my experience, than you could at one of the really big, more behemoth level
Right. Right.
out there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Very, very interesting perspective. No doubt about that. Mr. Lyden, if you could do it all over again, and I realize hindsight is always 2020, is there anything you would change about your OSI career at all?
I would. I wish that through my journey to where I am now, I would have worked more diligently to expose myself to more of our different mission sets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the process now of sort of building out a talent management framework for talent acquisition, talent retention of our 132 intelligence specialists.
Right.
And ultimately, I'm trying to design a system where Mike wouldn't necessarily be the best option to have the role that I have now. That there will be folks coming up who've seen the breadth of OSI's mission.
Right.
I've spent most of my career around science, technology related intelligence, almost my entire time in OSI, also focused around technology and technology protection, supply chain risk management, that kind of thing.
Right.
And we do a lot more than just that, right? That's just a sliver of our responsibility.
Sure.
So yeah, it's important, I think, for the analysts coming up now to really embrace that breadth of mission and know that it's good for their career to work in fraud, spend time on the law enforcement side, spend time in cyber, get that breadth of experience. Because I think that makes for a better analyst. And it certainly makes for a better leader of analysts.
I see. Very well said. Now let's shift gears once again and kind of go into your crystal ball a little bit. What direction do you envision OSI heading into the future?
So I'm going to stick initially with the first part of this answer to the national security side of the house. And we're facing a return of great power competition, a bipolar or multipolar world. And whether or not you agree with this assessment, our adversaries see the United States has reached a point in their assessment of irreversible decline, and they are going to become more bold. Right?
Sure.
We see that with all of our peers right now. And that makes our job much harder, right? When you're no longer necessarily feared by your adversaries, that they sense weakness, and that's going to shift how we do our work dramatically. Right. As we think about our prioritization of work and how we handle these very complex situations, because unlike past great power conflict, we have intertwined economies, for example, with China. Right. These are very complicated situations. There's economic security, national security. There's lots of variables here. So OSI is going to have to adapt to that world, and we're making those movements now. Right. That's happening in the background.
Sure.
How do we enable the Air Force and the Space Force to perform its mission in that environment? So that's first. The second is broader than that, and this includes our law enforcement missions as well as the whole spectrum. I talked about innovation earlier, and OSI is doubling down, all right, on the embracing of innovation as we look at digital transformation and how that's going to affect how we do our work in the world. It's understanding the role of artificial intelligence and machine learning in informing and enabling the work that we do. And there's a race right now between, again, near peer states, right, to figure out how AI, which I think is the next big disruptive thing, if it's not already done so in our lives, and how we're going to embrace that at OSI. And so that's going to shape everything from criminal investigations at the base level for drug use, all the way up through complex national security cases. AI and machine learning will have an impact on all of that.
Right. It's very, very thoughtful response there, Mr. Lyden, and I'm sure time will tell on how it all pans out. Let's kind of turn a little introspectively now to OSI, and Why, in your view, is diversity and inclusion a foundational element to OSI's success?
3 words: combating cognitive bias.
Okay.
That's one of my roles as the SIO for the command, right? Is ensuring that we apply appropriate tradecraft to our intelligence work. And a cornerstone of intelligence analysis is understanding how to mitigate as best as possible. It's not a foolproof thing, right? How do we mitigate cognitive bias? And one of the ways you do that is ensuring a free flow of new, fresh ideas into your process.
Right.
And one of the ways you can get there, right, is having a diverse, inclusive pool of intelligence specialists performing that work with different backgrounds, different life experiences, different world experiences, right? That brings new ideas. That brings an ability to think outside of sort of an established mental schema or framework for the way maybe a bad guy behaves.
Right.
Let's shift that. So it's the number one thing we can do to combat cognitive bias.
Very, very well put. Now let's shift gears one more time and put your recruiting hat on for a second, if we could. What advice would you give someone wanting to join OSI?
Well, don't let your background dissuade you. If you don't think that you have a law enforcement background or a traditional intelligence background or a military background, don't let that dissuade you. Back to the idea of diversity and inclusion. We're looking for all kinds of people to perform our mission. What we want are people who understand how to think about the world, not what to think about the world.
Right.
So don't disqualify yourself, right? You don't think you have that background. As an example, we're building out a series of new detachments in some of the innovation centers around the country, places like Silicon Valley and Austin. And we're actively recruiting individuals with backgrounds in venture capital, economics, engineering.
Right.
All different ways of coming at this very complex mission set that we've kind of hinted at here. We need more than people with that traditional, I've spent my entire 20 years in the intelligence community. They have a role, right? Deep subject matter expertise has a role, but so does breadth of experience in bringing these new thoughts and ideas. So don't self-disqualify yourself.
Okay.
If it sounds awesome, give us a ring, right?
Very, very good. You make a nice recruiter. That's always very well said. Now, before we wrap things up, Mr. Lyden, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, no, I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity to shed some light on some of the inner workings of an organization that historically, right, we're a bit more quiet and we do a lot of cool things. And so it's exciting to get a chance to talk about that with folks outside of the office.
Very, very well said. Our guest has been Mr. Mike Lyden, Senior Intelligence Officer for OSI and the Associate Director for Intelligent Management. Sir, thanks so much again for taking the time to be with us. Really enjoyed talking with you.
I enjoyed it too. Thank you.
And thanks to all of you listening for tuning in. For OSI Today and my OSI Journey, I'm Wayne Amon saying so long for now.